Saturday night, UFC Fight Night, Moreno versus Royval 2, going down in Mexico City at the Mexico City Arena. Oh, baby. It's going to be huge.
Yeah.
Quite a card. We're going to talk about, let's see, 6 or 7 of these fights. Before we do, any fights that you guys want to quickly spotlight for our fans and listeners?
I think there's a lot of fights on here that may end up being scraps that are pretty evenly matched. Some of them are maybe a bit lower level than others, but one that I do really like is Hani Barcelos. As you guys know, I'm always a fan of him against Christian Quinones. I think that is a fun fight. And I also really like Fares Siam against Claudio Puelles. Claudio Puelles. Wow, I'm fucking up a lot of names right now. My fault. But yeah, Fares Siam has looked really solid lately, and Puelles, obviously, we know what he brings. So I think that's pretty interesting style clash to see if Fares can keep him off him in that one.
Omar?
Yeah, honestly, man, the Claudia Puelles one is the one that I was looking forward to the most. The Fares Siam is definitely a fun fighter. I've been enjoying watching Puelles fight and get the subs that he's been getting, and yeah, just interested to see him continue his momentum.
Okay, let's start this off in the lightweight division. The first fight on the main card, once again going down in Mexico City. Manuel Torres versus Chris Duncan. Omar, give us your take and your pick.
Yeah, Manuel Torres is a motherfucker, man. This is a great way to start this card out, as far as I guess the main card is concerned. But Manuel Torres is a really, really, really good fighter. He's had some really good performances even in the UFC so far. Obviously, we're going to need to see more from him other than a guy like a Chris Duncan. But I still think we're at the point of his career where he's building up that highlight reel, getting the opportunity to really put on some good performances and some good shows. And I think we're going to continue that momentum here, and I think he gets another round 1 KO.
So round 1 KO for El Loco. Okay, Mark.
All right, close odds. Torres is minus 160. Chris Duncan is plus 130. The height is the same. Torres is going to have a 1.5 inch reach advantage. I definitely think they're looking to showcase, the Mexican Manuel Torres here if they can. He has 2 first-round knockouts through his first 2 UFC fights thus far. And Duncan's also 2-0 through 2 fights in the octagon. And he has looked good. He's shown that he can mix it up, take the fight where he needs to take it to get the W. The one knock on both of these guys I feel like that I've noticed so far through their 2-fight careers in the UFC is that they'll get hit. Duncan will almost willingly take one to give one. Torres more so is the guy who at times has his chin up in the air and gets caught. So I do see some chins getting tested here. And for that reason, I'm going to go with Torres, even though he makes me nervous. I think he's the harder hitter of the two. And he's also the one who has never been finished by strikes. So I'll trust him, and I'll go Torres round 2 knockout.
Well, we are unanimous on this one. I think this is nice matchmaking, honestly, for where both these guys are at. Both recent Contender Series grads. But man, just the eye test for Manuel Torres. The guy is a finisher. He has such great hands, heavy hands. I'm going to say that he gets another one and hand Chris Duncan his second knockout loss of his career. I'll say knockout is going to come in the second round, as I usually do. Okay, next up, women's strawweight division. We have, let's see, Mexico's Yazmin Jauregui taking on USA's Sam Hughes. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
Yes, my girl is back in action in Yazmin Jauregui.
Wow, I have no idea who you'll pick in this one.
It's going to be a long shot. You already know, man. I'm excited to see her fight. I love the way that she fights. Her striking, I thought, was on point. She got caught in her last fight. There wasn't really much to that fight. It was pretty quick. I can't even remember who she fought.
Denise Gomes.
Oh, Denise Gomes. Yeah, 20 seconds. It was like the first exchange they had, and she got caught early. Hopefully, I mean, I can't see that happening against Sam Hughes. In fact, I would imagine as long as she can keep the fight standing, Yazmin Jauregui is going to have a fun night picking Sam Hughes apart. So I'm going to go Yazmin Jauregui here. I don't know if she finishes her. I'm gonna go with the 3rd round KO though. I'm feeling it. But I wouldn't surprise me if we end up going to a decision.
Okay, Mark.
She is a big favorite despite just getting knocked out. She's minus 500, and Sam Hughes is plus 380. 2 inches of height and a half inch of reach for Sam Hughes. And yeah, Yazmin needs to have this one, or she risks really starting to underwhelm based on the early hype that she had going for herself, that obviously she still has going as a minus 500 favorite. So she's got to get this. Obviously, the last fight didn't go her way. She was put down really quickly before she could really even get into her game. So it's possible that was an aberration. We'll see if she can right the ship here. And Sam Hughes is tough as hell, man. She never goes away. She'll battle on the feet. She'll battle in the grappling. She'll try to outwork you. She's not an easy night, but I'm going to lean toward Jauregui and trust the technique. I think she'll be cleaner. I think she'll just be generally outpointing Sam in this one. And I'm not sure that Hughes can do enough with the wrestling to change this fight. So I'm going to roll confidently with Yazmin to win a UD.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Nothing. You froze just a smidge. You're good though.
Yeah, you're good.
Yazmin UD was
you froze to us. That's okay. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think Yazmin comes away with the victory here. I'll be a little more go out on a limb here. I think she's going to find the finish. Let's not forget she has a 70% knockout rate, finish rate out of her 10 wins. So you're right. I agree. Sam Page, she's a tough girl, but I think Jauregui's technique and power are going to shine through in this one. I'll say round 3 TKO for Jauregui. Here we go. Fun one. Raul Rosas Jr. taking on Ricky Pretty Turcios in the bantamweight division. So the very young 19-year-old Raul Rosas Jr. fighting out of California. He is 8-1 as a young professional, with only one of those 8 wins going the distance. And most recently, he finished Terrence Mitchell riding the horse after losing for the first time ever against Christian Rodriguez. Here we go. His opponent, the ever-quotable Ricky Turcios, 30 years old, out of Houston, Texas, 12-3 as a pro. Most recently, split decision over Kevin Natividad. Omar, take it once again. Give us your take and your pick.
It's an interesting little combination of a fight here we have between Rosas Jr. and Turcios. 2 guys who I think could be better in different aspects of the game. I think one, obviously in Rosas Jr., you have somebody who's very comfortable in the ground game. Obviously, his hands and things like that, but his wrestling, I think is really his bread and butter. And Turcios is a guy who just works hard, man. He doesn't really have like a single attribute or a single area of expertise that he really excels in. At least to a degree where I would say he's exceedingly dangerous. He's just a scrapper and a worker, and he's been able to make it, succeed and make it work in his career so far. But he's edged out a lot of fights, and things are not going to get easier for him. I would imagine Rosas Jr. is just better than him overall from what we've seen recently, unless something has changed. But as a result of that, I'm going to go with Rosas Jr. here. I'm going to go with the 2nd round submission win.
Mark?
So Rosas Jr. is pretty big favorite. He's minus 275. Turcios is plus 215. The height is the same. Turcios does have a 4-inch reach, which he should really try to lean on, because Turcios can be out wrestled, and we know that Rosas is going to look to go that route. So anything Turcios can do to keep that space in this fight is going to benefit him. And I'm not saying he can't grapple, because he can. I just think that's not where you want to be with Rosas Jr., because I think the physicality is going to make a big difference in this fight, and it's pretty heavy on Raul's side of things. What's interesting, though, is that Turcios has cardio for days, and we are not sure if Rosas does. We've seen it be an issue before, and obviously we are in Mexico City at high as all fuck altitude. So I'm curious if we see that come into play. And Turcios, if we remove the one super weird Zahabi fight where he beat up the air for 15 minutes, is usually super active and looking to hurt you from every position. So he's going to be keeping a pace at least. So this could be tougher for Rosas than people think, especially if it goes late. But gun to my head, I still am going to trust the grappling, and just the physical superiority is what I'm struggling to pick against of Raul Rosas Jr. So I'll say he wins a UD.
I agree. I think that Turcios is a wild man in some cases, but I like the just the tenacity that Rosas Jr. has displayed thus far. I agree. I think he's going to grind his way to a UD and be back on a win streak here. Gotta love Pretty Ricky, though. Okay, lightweight division. Daniel Zellhuber versus, out of Mexico, by the way, versus the Argentine Francisco Prado. Mark, go first.
All right, Zellhuber, pretty big favorite again in this one. 270 minus 275. Francisco Prado plus 225. 2 inches of height and 1 inch of reach for Zellhuber. And actually, I don't know about that because Francisco Prado's reach is listed wildly different in some different places, I noticed. So it could be like 1 inch of reach. It could be like 6 inches of reach. I really, and if it's, I'm already picking Zellhuber. If it's 6, I'm picking him even more. But it is a bit of a tough call because, yes, I do think Zellhuber appears to be the better overall fighter thus far. He's been pretty slick on the feet. He'll wrap up a sub if you let him. He can take it to the grappling a bit. He's shown really good takedown defense. You know, a lot of positives for him. But he can be hit. We saw it in his last fight against Christos Giagos, where he had to navigate some rough moments in round 1. And if there's a dude you don't want to get hit by, it is Francisco Prado. He is a savage and a killer, and he's going to be looking for the off switch as long as this fight lasts. So I think it is a dangerous fight for Daniel Zellhuber. I could even see myself change my mind as this week goes on, and I think more about it, but I think I'm going to say Zellhuber mixes it up just enough to stay conscious and win 2 of these rounds. So I will go UD for Zellhuber.
Omar.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Zellhuber as well. I just think he's a little bit more consistent. I think Prado has the power advantage on there. Wouldn't surprise me if Prado ended up catching a body here as well. But I think the recipe itself looks like it's probably going to work out or more in favor for Zellhuber and what we have going on this weekend. So I'm going to go with Zellhuber here. I don't think he knocks out Prado, but I do think he ends up getting a submission win. I'm sorry, a decision win. So at least 2 out of the 3 here.
I'm with you, man. I think he's going to have that crowd behind him, obviously. This is an interesting matchup. But I will go with Zellhuber by knockout. I'll say round 2. Okay, now it gets really fun. Co-main event in the featherweight division. Yair El Pantera Rodriguez taking on Brian T-City Ortega. So I will cue this up because they deserve it. Yair, 31 years old, out of Mexico. Obviously. 19-4 with 1 no contest, with 8 knockouts on his record. Most recently, he got TKO'd by the great Alexander Volkanovski, trying to unify their belts in that one. And here we go, Brian T-City Ortega. 32 years old, out of Torres, California. 15-3 with 1 no contest. 10 finishes, 7 of those being submissions, obviously. Also looking to right the ship here and get back in the win column after back-to-back losses. The most recent one, I don't really consider it that much of a loss. A TKO injury against Yair Rodriguez back in July of 2022 due to his shoulder popping out in the middle of a scramble of a grappling exchange. I don't see how that can really be a loss for Ortega. It's a freak thing. Not really caused by Yair. So here we go. Ortega finally back in the octagon, taking on the always electric Yair Rodriguez. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
I like both of these guys. I think this is a very difficult fight to choose. You obviously have 2 guys who are well-rounded, both in in each other's respects, right? So Yair Rodriguez, while his bread and butter is his striking, his fluidity, his dexterity in his legs, he's also very good on the ground. He's very good with his submission game. He's very good with his BJJ and being able to move from position to position. And Brian Ortega, you could argue, is the opposite of that, right? His bread and butter is the ground game, knowing how to find those submissions and work his way there. But he can also crack, man. He'll lay you out with a knee. He'll lay you out with an elbow. He'll punch. He'll kick. Brian Ortega is just as much of a threat on his feet as he is on the ground. And I think that's what makes this fight so interesting. It's you really have two ninjas trying to figure out who's better than who, at least on that Saturday. So I think it's a difficult fight to really nail down and really put on the line who you think is better. But I did go with Yair Rodriguez here for unanimous decision. I just think he can win 2 out of 3 rounds, especially if he fights the fight smart. But Yair Rodriguez is not known to be perfect, but I think he can get it done.
Okay, Mark.
Yair is favored. He's -175. Ortega's +145. Yair is 3 inches taller. He'll have a 2-inch reach. Yeah, man. Freaking Brian Ortega hasn't fought in 19 months, over a year and a half on the sidelines. So it's a long time. It's a big factor for me in this fight. He's coming off multiple surgeries and what were apparently some real dark times where he wasn't sure whether it was even worth it to continue trying to get back. Where he was wondering if he should even try to be a fighter going forward. Now, I love Brian Ortega. I picked Brian Ortega the first time these two fought back in 2022. And if you ask me to break this down style for style and how I think these two match up with each other, I think I'd still be leaning toward Brian Ortega. Like, yes, he's at a disadvantaged standing, but I think he's okay enough. He's improved so much since the start of his UFC career there. He takes really nice angles. He makes guys miss. He walks them into counters. And, of course, we know he can absorb damage with the best of them. We've seen him take some ungodly beatings in there. And I think he can get Yair to the mat. We saw him do that in their first fight right before the injury. And as much as Yair's a nasty grappler as well, I don't love him in the grappling against Ortega because Yair, as good as he is, he can be controlled. We just saw him get out wrestled and out grappled by Max Holloway not that long ago. And I also think he has a bit of a Dustin Poirier quality about him where he can be reckless with his escapes and just too confident. And Brian Ortega will make you pay badly for making a mistake in the grappling. So breakdown-wise, in a vacuum, I do still think I favor Brian Ortega. The problem is I can't pick a guy who hasn't fought in 19 months and whose body was failing so badly that he almost decided there was no point in doing this anymore. So I would love to be wrong. I've always been a fan of Ortega. I love Yair too, but I'm going to have to go with Yair in this fight. Ring rust is a real thing, and I just think there's so many factors contributing to it on that side for Brian Ortega. And it's at elevation, which is just another fucking kick in the dick for returning to actively fighting.
Totally.
So I'll go with Yair to winning UD just by virtue of looking sharper, staying ahead. Maybe he does have one bad round on the mat, but otherwise I'll say UD for Yair.
Dude, you make all great points. The layoff is too much. Just too much. And to come back against a guy who throws as much firepower as Yair, I think it's just too tall of an order for Ortega. I have a little bit of pause in that because Ortega, he is just like a winner, man. Ortega, he has such a solid record when you look at it and you're like, damn, this guy wins a lot. His only 3 losses happened in the past, few years. His past 4 fights are his only 3 losses of his whole career. So I'm sure he very much wants to get back to his winning ways, but Yair, I think, is going to be throwing too much firepower at him. Across 3 rounds, I'm going to go Yair 29-28 or 30-27, Yair by UD. And that brings us to the main event here of this fight night. Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. Brandon on Brandon violence. Here we go. Brandon Royval Raw Dog is his nickname, let's not forget. 31 years old, out of Englewood, Colorado. 15-7 as a pro. Looking to get back in the win column against Moreno here in their rematch after losing to Pantoja for the second time back in December.
I have just realized something.
What's wrong?
Ortega and Yair is a 5-round fight.
Oh, they made that 5 rounds.
Yeah. And
Damn.
I remember it now. And I remember being thrilled when I heard it, but I forgot about it just because it's a co-main and I didn't think about it. I guess that doesn't change. I almost like Ortega more because now he has more time to find a grappling situation. But I guess I'm gonna keep my pick still.
Yeah, I'll still say UD.
You guys keeping yours? Yeah.
All right. I'll keep mine.
Sorry to interrupt. That was noteworthy.
But you're right. It does give me pause. I thought the exact same thing. That's better for Ortega. I think a 5-round fight. I think. Okay. Where was I? Mr. Assassin Baby. 21-7 as a pro with 2 draws. Also coming off of a loss at the hands of Alexandre Pantoja. For him back in July via split decision, losing his belt to the Brazilian. Now he is facing off against the American once again, Brandon Royval. Omar, would you like to start us off? Give us your take and your pick.
Yeah. I think you guys already know I don't pick against Brandon Moreno. It's just
Ever.
It's just not going to happen. The fact of the matter is Brandon's gotten better over time. I think Brandon Royval's game, while he's good at what he does, I think has stayed relatively consistent for better or worse. Moreno, you can see the significant changes that he's made to his game, the additions he's made to the kick game, among other things. So I see more potential in Moreno as I normally do. I think he's got a lot to offer, especially in this fight. And I think that the longer the fight goes, I think it favors Moreno. But I do think that he closes out the night with a submission 4th round against Royval.
As much as you guys know that I'm a big Brandon Royval fan, I don't think that would be a smart pick in this spot. I agree. I think that the Assassin Baby is just too talented at flyweight for Royval. For all of Royval's talents and chaos that he brings into a fight, I'm going to go with the Assassin Baby. And these flyweights, man, they find finishes, man. I'm not going with the UD on this one. I think that Moreno finds a finish. I think maybe a club and sub. I'll say round 4 for Moreno. Mark, take it home.
Wow, you've held the confidence all show long. It finally made its way out at the last possible moment.
Thank you.
All right, Moreno's minus 260. Royval is plus 210. 2 inches of height and a half inch of reach on the Royval side. Yes, he stepped in for Amir Albazi here, but they've each had a pretty solid amount of time prepping for each other. And of course, they've fought once already, which always helps, which ended due to the injury for Royval. Really, it ended by TKO because it kind of continued after his shoulder came out. But it was due to the injury. So it's nice that we get to see this again and get a true answer here. Very weird, as I'm just realizing that both the main and co-main on this card are rematches of a fight that ended because someone's shoulder got fucked up. So that's strange. But yeah, I think Brandon Moreno will get his rightful W in this one. I just think he's better, man. I know Royval can be dangerous, which he showed recently against, dangerous on the feet, which he showed recently against Nicolau. And of course, he's a submission threat at all times. But Brandon Moreno's a guy who's never been finished in any way through 30 pro fights, which is insane. I know Pantoja tapped him on tough, if you want to count that, but that was like 8 years ago, so the point remains, even if we include that. Moreno's no easy out, and I think he's better than Royval. I think he's the better striker with much better footwork, better angles, quicker hands, more power, in my opinion. I like him a lot in the striking, and then I also think he might be the better wrestler. Like, of course, Royval is going to be scrambling and looking to latch something up anytime they're connected, but I think Brandon can generally control it and stay safe. I think he can be in control for most of this fight, especially as it goes later in the fight. And I know Brandon Royval has never been finished by strikes, but I'm actually going to say that changes. In front of the Mexican crowd, they're going to be crazy behind Moreno here. His hands are just looking so crispy lately. I think he wears Royval down with a pace, hurts him a couple times, and then maybe eventually puts him out with some ground and pound. So I'll go TKO round 4 for Brandon Moreno.
Wow, same as me. Oh my god.